Don't touch him, ma'am. Men like that always bring trouble. Your little boy needs you more than some stranger on the sidewalk.
Naomi Carter had only $12 left, money meant for her sick son's medicine. Then she saw an old man dying in the rain. "Don't help him," someone warned. "He's trouble." But Naomi spent every dollar to save him. The next morning, dozens of fire trucks surrounded her house, and the man she saved was not who anyone thought he was. Naomi Carter had learned how to count money without making a sound. She sat at the tiny kitchen table in her rented house outside Atlanta, Georgia, smoothing 3 crumpled bills beneath her palm: a 5, 5 singles, and 2 quarters. $12. That was all she had left until Friday, and Friday felt impossibly far away. Naomi was 32, a black woman with tired brown eyes, a gentle face, and hands rough from years of work. She wore her hair tied back most days, not because she liked it that way, but because she never had time to do anything else. Since her husband Marcus died 2 years earlier, time had become something she borrowed, stretched, and lost. Marcus Carter had been a mechanic, the kind of man who came home with grease under his fingernails and laughter in his chest. He died in a construction site accident while repairing equipment for extra cash. Since then, Naomi had carried his absence like a second shadow. Across the room, her 7-year-old son Eli lay on the couch under a thin blanket. Eli was small for his age, with soft curls, serious eyes, and a smile that appeared only when he thought his mother was not watching. He had been coughing all evening, turning his face into the pillow each time, trying to make the sound smaller. Naomi noticed anyway. "You okay, baby?" she asked. Eli nodded too quickly. "I'm fine, Mama. Just sleepy." But Naomi saw the way his chest moved. Too tight. Too shallow. His pneumonia had cleared once, then returned in little pieces whenever the weather turned cold. The doctor had said he needed rest, warm food, and medicine the moment the cough came back. Naomi looked down at the $12 again. Medicine first, she told herself. Maybe a cup of hot chicken soup from the corner store, if there was enough left. A sharp knock hit the front door. Naomi opened it and found a folded paper taped to the wood. Behind the screen, Mrs. Harper stood on the porch next door, pretending not to watch. Mrs. Harper was a widowed woman in her late 60s, thin and sharp-eyed, with silver hair always pinned perfectly in place. She had lived on that street for 30 years and believed survival required suspicion. She cared about Naomi in her own hard way, but every warning came wrapped like an accusation. Naomi unfolded the paper. Final notice. Rent must be paid within 5 days. Failure to pay will result in eviction proceedings. Her stomach dropped. Mrs. Harper called from her porch. "I told you, Naomi, you can't save everybody. Poor folks don't get to play hero." Naomi folded the notice slowly. "I'm not trying to be a hero, Mrs. Harper." "You say that now," the older woman replied. "But that soft heart of yours is going to cost you one day." Naomi closed the door before her neighbor could see her eyes fill. An hour later, she pulled on her worn black jacket and kissed Eli's forehead before leaving for her night shift at the convenience store. His skin was warm, but not fever-hot. Not yet. "Get some sleep," she whispered. At work, Naomi stood behind the counter until her feet burned. She smiled at impatient customers, wiped coffee spills, restocked cigarettes, and counted the minutes until closing. When the last customer left, her manager locked the register and handed her the small cash payment for the extra hour she had worked. Still, after setting aside bus fare and rent money, Naomi had only $12 left. Outside, rain had started falling over Atlanta, cold and heavy. Naomi zipped her jacket, tucked the money deep into her pocket, and began the long walk home. $12. Medicine for Eli. Maybe soup. Maybe one more morning where she could pretend everything was still under control. She did not know that before she reached home, those $12 would become the hardest choice of her life. Naomi kept her head down as she walked through the rain, one hand gripping the $12 inside her jacket pocket. The streets outside Atlanta were nearly empty now, washed silver by streetlights and puddles. Her shoes were already soaked, and every step made a soft, miserable squeak. She thought about Eli on the couch, trying to hide his cough like a secret. Medicine, she reminded herself. Soup, if there's enough. Just get home. To save 10 minutes, Naomi cut through the old bus terminal on Garnett Street, a place most people avoided after dark. The shelter lights flickered above the cracked pavement. A ripped schedule flapped against a metal pole. That was when she heard a sound. Low, broken, almost swallowed by the rain. At first she thought it was the wind. Then she heard it again. A man, gasping. He was curled near the bench beneath the shelter, one shoulder pressed against the glass wall. He looked to be in his late 60s or early 70s, a white man with a gray beard, wet silver hair plastered to his forehead, and a torn brown coat hanging off his body. His hand was clenched against his chest. His lips trembled. His other hand scratched weakly at his pocket, as if he was trying to reach something but no longer had the strength. A city bus hissed to a stop nearby. The driver, a heavy-set man in his 50s with tired eyes and a plastic rain poncho over his uniform, opened the door just long enough to look out. "Ma'am, don't get involved," he called. "People like that bring trouble. Half the time they're drunk, high, or looking for a fight." A young woman under the shelter, maybe 21, with bright red nails and a phone already raised, whispered, "Oh my God," and started recording instead of helping. Naomi stepped closer. "Sir, can you hear me?" The old man's eyes fluttered. His breath came in sharp, uneven pulls. "Badge," he rasped. "Pocket." Naomi hesitated, then reached carefully into the inside pocket of his coat. Her fingers touched cold metal. She pulled out an old firefighter's badge, blackened at the edges like it had survived a fire. The name was scratched, but she could make out 2 words: Captain Brooks. A patrol car rolled slowly past the curb, its tires slicing through rainwater. Naomi waved both arms. "Officer, please, he needs help!" The officer, a young white man with close-cut hair and a bored expression, lowered his window just halfway. He glanced at the old man, then at the badge in Naomi's hand. "Probably sleeping it off," he said. "Call the non-emergency line if he's still here in the morning." Then he drove away, leaving red taillights bleeding across the wet street. Naomi stood frozen, the $12 burning in her pocket. The bus driver shut his door. The young woman kept recording. Nobody moved toward the man. Then Naomi remembered Marcus, her husband lying broken after the accident, a stranger kneeling beside him, holding his hand so he would not die alone. Naomi swallowed hard, dropped to her knees in the rain, and put one hand on the old man's shoulder. "Stay with me," she whispered. "I'm not leaving you here." Naomi did not wait for anyone else to become brave. She pushed herself up from the wet pavement and ran toward the small convenience store across the street, rain slapping against her face. Behind her, the old man's breathing sounded thinner, weaker, like each breath had to fight its way out. Inside the store, harsh white lights buzzed above narrow aisles. Naomi grabbed a bottle of water, a small pack of pain relievers, and a cheap hand towel from a bottom shelf. Her hands shook as she reached the counter. The cashier was a broad-shouldered man in his 40s with a shaved head, a stained blue vest, and a face already twisted with irritation. "You're dripping all over my floor," he snapped. Naomi dropped the items on the counter. "Please, how much?" He looked through the window at the old man outside and frowned. "You bringing that mess in here?" Naomi's voice sharpened. "A man is dying." The register beeped. $11.83. Naomi pulled out her last $12 and handed them over. $12 for Eli's medicine. $12 for soup. Gone in one breath. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911 as she ran back outside, but the screen flashed red. 2% battery. The call connected for 3 seconds, then died. "No, no, no," Naomi whispered. She sprinted back to the store door. "Call 911 now!" The cashier cursed under his breath, but when he saw her face, something in him shifted. He picked up the phone and gave the address. Old bus stop on Garnet, possible heart attack. Naomi did not stay to thank him. She ran back into the rain. She knelt beside the old man and placed the folded towel beneath his head. His face was pale, his beard soaked, his fingers cold as they clutched at her sleeve. "Sir, I need you to stay awake," she said, opening the water. "Can you tell me your name?" His eyelids fluttered. "Caleb," he rasped. "Caleb Brooks." Naomi tore open the medicine packet, then hesitated, unsure how much to give him. "I'm not a doctor," she whispered, panic rising. "But help is coming. Just keep looking at me." Caleb's hand found hers with surprising strength. His eyes were cloudy, but his fear was clear. "My daughter," he breathed. "Don't let them sell the house." Naomi leaned closer, rain running down her cheek like tears. "What house?" Caleb's lips trembled. "Rachel, she doesn't know." Naomi did not understand any of it, the badge, the house, the daughter, but she squeezed his hand anyway. "Listen to me, Mr. Brooks. You are going to live long enough to tell her yourself. Do you hear me? You're not dying on this sidewalk tonight." Sirens finally cut through the rain. An ambulance turned the corner, followed by a red fire rescue truck. A young firefighter jumped out before the truck had fully stopped. He was tall, maybe 28, with sandy brown hair plastered under his helmet and the intense eyes of someone used to running toward danger. His name tag read, Reed. He dropped beside Naomi, took one look at Caleb's face, and froze. "Captain Brooks," his voice cracked. Naomi looked up. "You know him?" Tyler Reed swallowed hard. Years earlier, Caleb had dragged him out of a burning warehouse when Tyler was only a rookie. As paramedics moved in, a damp paper slipped from Naomi's pocket. Her eviction notice. Tyler saw it land near his boot. He picked it up silently, read just enough to understand, then folded it and placed it back beside her without saying a word. The ambulance doors slammed shut with Caleb Brooks inside, and Tyler Reed climbed in after him without waiting for permission. The paramedics worked around Caleb's body with practiced speed, cutting open his wet shirt, checking his pulse, placing oxygen over his face. Tyler sat near the end of the stretcher, soaked from the rain, unable to take his eyes off the man he had once believed was impossible to break. To the city, Caleb Brooks had been a legend. He had served nearly 35 years with Atlanta Fire Rescue, rising from a rookie with more courage than sense to one of the most respected captains in the department. He had pulled children from burning apartments, carried elderly people down smoke-filled stairwells, and once stayed inside a collapsing warehouse long enough to save 3 trapped workers. Tyler had been one of them. Back then, Tyler Reed had been 19, scared, and certain he was going to die under a wall of smoke and falling timber. Caleb had found him by touch alone and dragged him out with burns on both arms. But now that same man lay on a stretcher looking thin, exhausted, and almost forgotten. At Grady Memorial Hospital, Caleb was rushed behind swinging doors. Tyler waited in the hallway, still holding Naomi's damp eviction notice in his hand. He had meant to give it back. Instead, the words stayed with him. 5 days, eviction proceedings, failure to pay. Naomi had used her last $12 to save a man she did not know while standing on the edge of losing her own home. When Caleb finally woke, Tyler was beside his bed. The old captain opened his eyes slowly, then tried to sit up. "Easy," Tyler said. "You scared half the department tonight." Caleb gave a weak smile. "Only half?" Tyler leaned closer. "What happened to you, Cap? People said you disappeared." Caleb's smile faded. He looked older than Tyler remembered. After Mary died, everything came apart. Mary Brooks had been Caleb's wife, a school librarian with kind eyes and a reputation for feeding every firefighter who entered her kitchen. Without her, Caleb's house became quiet, and his daughter Rachel became his only reason to keep moving. Rachel Brooks was 34, a high school counselor with her mother's steady voice and her father's stubborn heart. But grief had built a wall between her and Caleb. She believed he had walked away from the family when bills and legal notices began piling up. What she did not know was that Caleb had left to follow a paper trail. "Harrington Development," Caleb whispered. Tyler frowned. "The real estate company?" Caleb nodded. Harrington Development had been buying up old homes across Atlanta, especially in neighborhoods where families were behind on taxes or rent. Caleb had discovered forged documents tied to his own house, then learned Naomi's rental block was listed in the same redevelopment plan. "They want Rachel's house," Caleb said, "and half that neighborhood after it." "Does Rachel know?" "She thinks I abandoned her." Caleb's voice broke. "I let her think it because the closer she got, the more danger she'd be in." Then Caleb told Tyler about Naomi, the woman in the rain, the $12, the way she stayed when everyone else stepped back. Tyler looked again at the eviction notice in his hand. "She's about to lose her place too," he said quietly. Caleb closed his eyes, pained. "Then we owe her more than thanks." Tyler stood and walked into the hallway. One by one, he called the firefighters who still owed Caleb Brooks their lives, their careers, or their courage. He did not tell them everything. Not yet. He only said, "Captain Brooks needs us, and so does the woman who saved him." By morning, the rain had stopped, but Naomi Carter's street felt colder than it had the night before. Whispers moved faster than sunlight. Someone had seen her at the bus stop. Someone else said she had emptied her pockets for a dangerous homeless man. By 7 o'clock, the story had become bigger than the truth. Naomi stood in her kitchen, spreading the last spoonful of peanut butter across one slice of bread for Eli. Eli sat at the table, pale and quiet, wearing one of Marcus's old flannel shirts over his pajamas because it made him feel close to his father. Mrs. Harper knocked once and opened the screen door before Naomi could answer. The older woman's silver hair was pinned tightly, and her face carried the severe look of someone who believed worry gave her permission to judge. "Naomi, I heard what you did last night," she said. "You spent your last money on some man from the street?" Naomi kept her voice low. "He was dying." Mrs. Harper pointed toward Eli. "And your boy is sick. He needed that money more than a stranger did." Eli looked down at his bread, pretending not to listen, but Naomi saw his fingers tighten around the plate. After Mrs. Harper left, silence filled the kitchen. Eli hugged the worn teddy bear Marcus had won for him at a county fair years ago. One of the bear's button eyes was missing, but Eli carried it whenever he was scared. "Mama?" he asked softly, "do you wish you didn't help that man?" Naomi's throat tightened. She thought of the $12, the medicine she still could not buy, and Caleb's cold hand gripping hers in the rain. Then she knelt beside her son. "No, baby," she said. "The only thing I'd regret is watching someone die and doing nothing." Before Eli could answer, a sound rolled through the neighborhood. At first it was low, almost like thunder beyond the trees. Then it grew louder. Sirens, engines, heavy tires splashing through wet pavement. Naomi stepped to the window. Her breath caught. One red fire truck turned onto the street, then another, then another. Their lights flashed against the windows of every small house on the block. Doors opened, curtains moved. Children pressed their faces to glass before frightened parents pulled them back. Panic spread instantly. Mr. Collins, Naomi's landlord, arrived in a tan sedan and stormed across the sidewalk with his phone in one hand and Naomi's eviction notice in the other. He was a narrow-faced man in an expensive coat, the kind of person who smiled only when someone owed him money. "This is exactly the problem," he barked at Naomi. "You bring chaos to my property, then expect sympathy when rent is due?" Mrs. Harper shouted for everyone to stay back. A young local reporter named Dana Mills, a sharp-eyed woman with a camera crew from Channel 6, hurried onto the corner, drawn by reports of fire trucks filling a residential street. Eli clutched his teddy bear against his chest and hid partly behind Naomi's leg. "Mama, are they here to take you away?" he whispered. Naomi wanted to say no with certainty, but fear had already closed around her ribs. Neighbors gathered in doorways, staring at her like she had invited danger into their lives. The fire trucks stopped in a long red line. The sirens died, one by one. For one breath, the whole street went silent. Then, a young firefighter stepped down from the first truck. Naomi recognized him immediately. Tyler Reed looked toward her, serious and calm, as dozens of firefighters formed behind him. Tyler Reed stepped down from the first fire truck, with his helmet tucked under one arm. His face was serious, but not threatening. Behind him, the line of red trucks stretched down Naomi's street like a wall of flashing lights. Neighbors stood frozen on porches and sidewalks. Mrs. Harper had one hand pressed to her chest. Mr. Collins, Naomi's landlord, still held the eviction notice like a weapon. Eli hid behind Naomi, clutching his old teddy bear so tightly its worn seams pulled apart. Then another figure stepped out from behind Tyler. Naomi's breath caught. It was Caleb Brooks. He looked weak, his face pale from the hospital, but he stood tall in an old Navy firefighter coat with brass buttons and faded patches on the sleeves. His gray-white beard was trimmed now, and though his hands trembled slightly, his eyes were clear. The entire line of firefighters straightened when they saw him, not out of fear, but respect. A silence fell over the street, so complete that even the reporter, Dana Mills, lowered her microphone. Caleb walked slowly toward Naomi and stopped in front of her. "This woman saved my life," he said, his voice rough, but strong enough for everyone to hear. "Last night, I was lying in the rain, and people saw a problem. They saw a drunk. They saw a man not worth the trouble." He turned toward the neighbors. But Naomi Carter saw what the rest of them didn't. She didn't see a homeless man. She didn't see a burden. She saw a human being. Mrs. Harper looked down. Caleb reached into his coat and pulled out the burned firefighter badge Naomi had found the night before. "I was Captain Caleb Brooks, Atlanta Fire Rescue. I spent my life running into burning buildings. But last night, I couldn't save myself." His eyes returned to Naomi. She used her last $12 to buy water, medicine, and a towel for a stranger. $12 that were meant for her sick son. A murmur moved through the crowd. Eli looked up at his mother with wide eyes. Then Tyler raised one hand, and the firefighters began moving. From the trucks, they unloaded boxes of groceries, warm blankets, school supplies, children's clothes, cleaning products, a new mattress, and a wooden bed frame for Eli. 2 firefighters carried bags from a pharmacy marked with Eli's name. 3 months of medication, Tyler told Naomi gently. Already paid for. Naomi covered her mouth, unable to speak. Mr. Collins pushed forward. That's nice and all, but she still owes me rent. A woman in a charcoal suit stepped out from the second truck. She was in her 40s, composed and sharp-eyed, with a leather folder under one arm. I'm Angela Price, counsel for the Brooks Firehouse Foundation, she said. And before you demand another $1, Mr. Collins, we need to discuss the illegal maintenance fees, duplicate late charges, and false repair bills you've been adding to tenants' accounts. Mr. Collins's face went pale. He lowered the notice. At that moment, a woman ran from a car parked near the corner. Rachel Brooks was in her mid-30s, with brown hair pulled into a loose ponytail, tired blue eyes, and the kind of face grief had hardened too early. She stopped when she saw Caleb. "Dad?" she whispered. Caleb turned. For a second, all his strength seemed to leave him. Rachel crossed the street and fell into his arms, sobbing. "I thought you left us," she cried. "I was trying to protect you," Caleb whispered. The firefighters looked away respectfully. Tyler handed Naomi a large envelope. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a letter from the Brooks Firehouse Foundation. It promised 1 full year of rent paid in advance, complete medical coverage for Eli's treatment, and a formal job offer for Naomi as a community support coordinator. Naomi sank to her knees, crying. Mrs. Harper stepped forward slowly. Her voice broke. "Naomi? I was wrong." Naomi looked at the boxes, the firefighters, Caleb holding his daughter, and Eli staring at the medicine bags like they were treasure. For the first time in years, help had not arrived too late. That evening, after the fire trucks left and Naomi's street finally quieted, Tyler Reed and Rachel Brooks sat at Naomi's kitchen table, with Caleb's burned firefighter badge between them. Rachel, still shaken from seeing her father alive, turned the badge over in her hands. "He said badge and pocket for a reason," Naomi said softly. Caleb looked from his hospital chair near the window, weak but alert. Rachel pressed her thumb along the cracked edge of the badge. Something clicked. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a tiny USB drive taped inside. Tyler borrowed Naomi's old laptop, and within minutes, the screen filled with files. Emails, scanned contracts, property maps, lists of tenants marked pressure candidates. Rachel's face went pale when she saw her childhood address. Then Naomi saw her own street highlighted in red. Harrington Development had not only targeted Caleb's house, they had planned to force out half the neighborhood, including Naomi, by using forged repair debts, inflated fees, and false eviction notices. Mr. Collins's name appeared in several email chains as a cooperating landlord. Rachel covered her mouth, tears rising. "Dad, all this time, I thought you ran away." Caleb lowered his eyes. "I thought if I stayed close, they would come after you next." Rachel knelt beside him and took his hand. "I needed my father more than I needed protection from a distance." Caleb's face broke. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." Rachel cried into his shoulder, and for the first time in years, Caleb let himself hold his daughter without hiding the truth. The next afternoon, Tyler arranged an emergency community meeting inside the old recreation hall near Naomi's street. Dana Mills from Channel 6 set up a live broadcast in the back. Neighbors filled every chair, whispering nervously as Naomi stood beside Caleb, Rachel, Tyler, and Angela Price, the foundation lawyer. Mrs. Harper sat in the front row, her hands folded tightly in her lap. For the first time, she looked less angry than afraid. Rachel connected the USB drive to a projector. One by one, the documents appeared on the wall. Forged signatures, fake repair invoices, internal emails from Harrington Development, and a list of families they planned to remove. Gasps spread through the room. Angela Price explained that the evidence had already been sent to state investigators. Then, the doors opened. 2 officers walked in and approached a well-dressed man near the back, Victor Harrington, the company's owner, who had come expecting to intimidate the neighborhood. Instead, he was placed in handcuffs as Dana's camera streamed everything live. The room erupted. Some people cried, some shouted, others simply stared at Naomi, realizing the woman they had blamed had helped uncover the threat hanging over all of them. Mrs. Harper stood slowly. "I lost my first home to people like him," she admitted, voice trembling. "That's why I was scared. But fear made me judge the wrong person." Eli stepped forward, still holding his worn teddy bear. His voice was small but clear. "My mama is the bravest person I know." The crowd fell silent, then burst into applause as Naomi pulled him close. 6 months later, the abandoned firehouse on Mason Avenue no longer looked like a forgotten building. Its broken windows had been replaced with bright glass. The old brick walls had been cleaned, the rusted doors repainted a deep red, and a new sign hung proudly above the entrance: the Carter Brooks House. What had once been empty and silent was now filled with children's laughter, warm meals, job applications, medical forms, and people who finally had somewhere to go. Naomi Carter stood near the front desk, wearing a navy blazer and a name badge that read, Naomi Carter, Community Outreach Director. She was still the same woman who had knelt in the rain with $12 in her pocket. But now her tiredness had been replaced by purpose. Every morning, she helped families apply for housing support, arranged medical care for children, connected homeless veterans with shelters, and made sure no struggling parent was ever treated like a problem. Eli was healthier than he had been in years. His cough was gone, his cheeks had filled out, and his backpack was always full of books instead of unpaid medical notices. In his new bedroom, above a small wooden desk, he had taped a drawing of his mother standing between 2 fire trucks. Underneath it, in crooked red crayon, he had written, "My mom saved a hero." Naomi cried the first time she saw it, but Eli only grinned and said, "It's true." Justice had come too. Harrington Development was forced to pay restitution to every family it had cheated. Some families received their homes back. Others received enough money to start over. Mr. Collins, Naomi's former landlord, lost control of the rental block after investigators uncovered illegal fees, forged repair bills, and threats against tenants. For the first time in years, the families on Naomi's street slept without wondering if a paper on the door would destroy their lives. Rachel Brooks got her family home back. She and Caleb were still healing, but now they had dinner together every Sunday. Tyler Reed became one of the foundation's most loyal volunteers. To Eli, he became something even more important. The man who showed up for school events, taught him how to fix a bicycle chain, and never made promises he did not keep. Naomi never rushed to name what Tyler had become in her life, but when he stood beside her, the future felt less frightening. At the grand opening ceremony, the entire neighborhood gathered outside the Carter Brooks house. Mrs. Harper, dressed in her best church coat, stepped to the microphone with trembling hands. "I used to think kindness was a luxury only rich people could afford," she said. "Naomi taught me that kindness is something even the poor can give, and sometimes it saves a whole community." Then Caleb walked forward, with the old, burned Firefighter badge in his hand. It had been polished, repaired, and engraved with new words. He placed it in Naomi's palm. To the woman who ran toward the fire when everyone else walked away. Naomi looked down at the badge, then at Eli laughing in the sunlight as fire trucks lined the street and sounded their sirens in tribute. She had once lost $12. In return, she found justice, family, purpose, and a community that finally knew how to love one another. In the end, Naomi did not save Caleb because he was rich, important, white, poor, or powerful. She saved him because he was a human being lying in the rain, begging for one more chance to live. Maybe that is what God wanted everyone on that street to see. Not the color of someone's skin, not the clothes on their back, not the rumors people whisper about them, but the soul standing in front of us. Naomi had only $12, but she gave what she had, and God turned that small act of mercy into justice, healing, and a new beginning for an entire community. So let me ask you this. If you were in Naomi's place, would you have stopped? Would you have helped the stranger everyone else judged? Or would fear have made you walk away? If this story touched your heart, leave a comment and tell me, do you believe kindness is ever wasted? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us for more powerful stories about faith, justice, and the people God uses in unexpected ways.